Having put 306 miles in my first pair and 59 miles in my second pair, it got me thinking just how much this one shoe has disrupted the running shoe market, and this is something other brands need to think about. And whether you love the shoe or hate the shoe, you can't deny that this is a genius move from Adidas, or at least I think so anyway, and I want to explain to you why I think that is. Now, to explain this in more detail, let's see or think about where Adidas have positioned the EVO SL. Now, from my perspective and a lot of people's perspective, this is a training partner to the Pro 4, their super shoe. However, if you're anything like me, you've probably been logging all your daily miles in it and some of your workouts as well. Pretty much a jack of all trades shoe. Now, I'm honestly not 100% sure where Adidas were aiming to market this, but I think that's where it's ended up falling just because of how versatile the shoe is. However, I will say with the setup of the shoe, it definitely lends itself to being that training partner to the super shoe. Now, you'll see a pattern build up here as we go through this, but let's look at the competitors. What is the EVO SL stacking itself up against in terms of that training partner to the super shoe? We've got the ASICS Magic Speed 4, which uses FF Blast Turbo, not FF Blast Turbo Plus, which is what you will find in their premium racing shoes. You could argue the Super Blast is the training partner, but actually I think that's what the Magic Speed has specifically been designed for. Saucony Endorphin Speed 5, brand new release, still using Power Run PB, not the Power Run PB or HG combination that the Pro uses, or even just the HG that the original Saucony Endorphin Elite uses, or even the newer foam that's in version 2 of that shoe. The Nike Zoom Fly 6, this has always been the training partner to the Vaporfly. This uses Nike's premium Zoom X foam, but you guessed it, it's encased within an SR2 carrier foam. Let's call it a 2 foam setup, shall we? So it's encased in that carrier foam. However, it does have a carbon plate like its racing partner, but as I said, that midsole setup isn't quite the same. The Puma Deviate Nitro 3, it's using Puma's Nitro foam, not its Nitro Elite foam. It's not quite the same midsole foam setup as the racing shoe. The Hoka Mach X3, this is a dual layer midsole, so it's got their racing calibre midsole foam, I believe it's on the top layer, and then an EVA blend on the bottom layer to add a bit of stability and structure to the shoe. Again, that one has a plate in it, but again, still different from the racing shoe setup. The Super Comp Trainer 3 from New Balance, this is a fuel cell and EVA blend, not a fuel cell and PIBA blend like in its racing counterpart, the SC Elite. The Brooks Hyperion Max 2, this again is a decent setup in the midsole, but we are once again looking at a nylon plate. I'd say this is the training partner to their racing shoe. You've also got the Hyperion as well, which is more of a pure speed day shoe, but again, not the same midsole. And really, we could throw in Adidas's Boston 13. Once again, it's got those energy rods as per the Pro version 4, but it is a dual midsole setup in the form of mostly Lightstrike Pro, but there is that Lightstrike in the back of the shoe. And then we have the EVO SL. Can you see where I'm going with this? So we have the same stack height as set up in the Pro 4. We have got full Lightstrike Pro minus the rods, so we don't have any speed aids in the shoe like rods or a plate, but we have the exact midsole setup, and we just have more of a daily trainer upper in the shoe. So it's a little bit more comfortable, it's a little bit thicker, it's not quite as stripped back as a Pro 4, but in terms of my UK size 13, this thing is lighter than its previous racing shoe, the Pro 3, so I'm getting a lighter package than the previous racing shoe, which is absolutely incredible. And shall we just mention the fact that this shoe retails at £130. So all of the shoes that I have just listed from the other brands do not compete in terms of price with this shoe. If you're based in the UK, you can get a 15% discount if you buy this on sports shoes. No, that's not a promotional plug. It's just the fact that if you're an England Athletics member, you automatically get a 15% discount. So you can get this thing for, I think it's in and around 115, 16 pounds. So from Adidas perspective, it's genius in the fact that they're giving us pretty much a race day caliber shoe, slightly more tuned upper for that daily training miles. If it was obviously a bit lighter and it had the rods in it, you'd be looking at the Pro 4. But they've given us something that we can log those daily miles in, and it is honestly absolutely incredible. With the price point as well, you just can't go wrong. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are people that dislike the shoe. That is completely understandable, but what you cannot deny, I think, in all of this is Adidas have pretty much come out, undercut every single other brand out there in terms of price and also the materials used in this training shoe. Now, the second reason why I think this is a genius move from Adidas, and this is my perspective and also talking to a lot of my other athletes and a lot of you guys out there on social media. I have probably at this stage this year tested the least amount of shoes that I have ever tested before in a year. I've probably tested about 10 shoes, which is far less than where I would normally be at this point in the year. And the main reason for that is there's been shoe releases over the last 2 or 3 months that have come out and I have gone, yes, do you know what, I'd love to test that, but wait a minute, is it even going to get a look in if I'm using this thing? I've honestly nearly bought about 3 or 4 other shoes, but just push pause on it because I know that my training comes first. As much as I love to produce shoe reviews on YouTube and love to produce as much shoe content as I can, I have to put my training needs first. And this thing is just doing far and away the best job that I could ever imagine for any training shoe that I've honestly had in such a long time. Now, speaking to other athletes, they are pretty much in the same boat. They're picking up multiple pairs of these, especially if they are UK based and on sports shoes, because you can just get them now for such a cheap price. A lot of them aren't even putting other shoes into the rotation anymore because they're just finding this thing does absolutely everything, and they'd rather cycle through pairs of these shoes, get about 300 miles and then 500 kilometers roughly, retire them and then just slip a new pair on. And the third thing, again, this is very quickly and very personal, but I do think they have a bit of a secret weapon in the form of the Lightstrike Pro, in the fact that it is just so durable. I think getting 300 miles out of this shoe or 500k is just not that hard. I did find after around 300 miles that my ankles were starting to collapse in a little bit too much, but slipping on the newer pair, I'm just not having that issue at the moment once again, and it's lovely to be able to log those miles. So I'm more than happy to spend and get a discount, the money to buy this thing brand new, to just log 300 miles and just rinse and repeat and go again. As I'm personally going into higher mileage and then potentially into marathon training, I'm definitely looking for shoes that will just absorb mileage without any hassle or any worries. And again, as I said, Lightstrike Pro just does an amazing job at that. And the fourth reason why I think they're quite genius, and I actually think this is probably the biggest thing out of all of them, this is a bit of a lure into the Adidas brand for me. I think they've cast this shoe out there and they're seeing a lot of people come into the brand and trying and testing out other shoes, realizing just how good this shoe is and taking a punt on other shoes. For me, I saw the hype with this, and I will say straight off the bat, I was not impressed with the way that this shoe was drip fed out there. We've been used to seeing those small prototype releases or small limited color releases, but then a big release. They eked this thing out way too long. Or did they? Because honestly, now this is on the mass market and widely available, yes, I'm sure the sales will be high, but the hype that it's producing, the amount of people I now see out there with this shoe on feet, especially at events and races, warming up in the shoe, walking around, just talking to people about this shoe a lot, it is absolutely incredible. Now for me, knowing and hearing and speaking to a few people before this actually came out in March, when I could finally get my hands on it, I was instantly lured back into the brand, having had good success with the Pro 3 last year, and I took a punt on the ADIDAS 9, which for me right now is probably a top 3 shoe of the year. I've been loving that shoe. A much thinner amount of Lightstrike Pro in there, but it's doing really well on those speed day shoes, and I'm still using it for runs up to and in and around 13 miles. So I'm covering a good half marathon in that shoe. It also made me really frustrated that they haven't released the Pro 4 in a 13.5. I have tried a 14 on, it is a little bit too baggy for me, and the 13 is just too small. So I'm really hoping at some point they do release a 13.5. But either way, I genuinely think this shoe single-handedly, probably along with the EVO 1 and the EVO 2 for other reasons, has really put the brand back on the map, and I think that these guys could be a brand of the year for a lot of people this year. Now, I guess the only drawback with this shoe is how it's probably impacted Boston sales. I don't know whether it's made them better or worse. I'd honestly love to know. You're looking at a shoe there with the Boston, which has majoritively Lightstrike Pro setup, but it does have their standard Lightstrike in the back, just to add a little bit more stability back here and add a little bit more durability. It does have the energy rods in that shoe, unlike this one. So what I've heard from people instantly is when they're testing out the Boston, it's a little bit dead, it's a little bit of a dud. But on the other hand, I have heard from people now that have put 50 to 100 miles in it, and they have said, Andy, classic Lightstrike situation. It opens up with the rods. It's a really good shoe. I'd take the EVO up to a half marathon. I wouldn't have any qualms in taking the Boston for a lot longer. So whether people just needed to give the Boston a little bit more time, I don't know. But I do look at it on paper, and as I said, I have personally nearly pulled the trigger on the Boston a couple of times, but I've just been hesitant because I'm thinking, would I use it over this shoe? It's heavier. I've heard the upper's not quite as good as this shoe, so am I going to get the same enjoyment? Probably not. So would I rather spend money on that or get another pair of these? I'd probably rather get another pair of these. And I think that's a lot of people's mindsets right now with that shoe. So I think that's the only drawback. It's probably created a little bit of confusion between the Evo and the Boston, and whether people need both in the rotation or just the one. Overall, it is absolutely genius from Adidas, in my opinion anyway. When I listed off those other brands, you could see that they're using blends of midsoles, or maybe nearly the racing calibre setup, but not quite, just to allow you a little bit more durability, maybe a bit more stability in training, something that's going to be able to log a few more miles. That's why those midsoles, those plates have been tinkered with slightly, whereas this thing, you're just getting pretty much a racing shoe setup. Yes, it doesn't quite have that propulsion that you get from the Pros. For me, I'm running in this thing plus the Pro 3. And I do notice a difference. The Pro 3 is a lot more snappier. I do feel like that one does put me on my toes a bit more, and I do get a lot more pop from the shoe. That's the only thing lacking, but I'm really not worried. From a training perspective, yes, it's lovely to have all of those wonderful features, but I'd rather save that for race day and log miles in something like this, where I'm pretty much getting a racing shoe setup in a very lightweight package. Now, I personally think other brands will have an answer to this in the next 12 to 18 months. I think we will see shoes come out that will compete with this one, and whether, as I said in the beginning, whether you get on with this shoe or not, because I know a lot of you guys absolutely love it, but I know some of you just couldn't get on with it. Of course, we're all individual and not every single shoe is going to work well for us, but I think undeniably we've got to commend them for producing such a shoe like this with the price point. It's just unbeatable on every single level. And as I said, there will be answers from other brands, I'm sure there will be, but right now I think Adidas have definitely stolen a march, and I'd love to throw the question back out to you guys. Do you think that this shoe has been a genius move from Adidas? I do stand by the fact that that 6-month drawn out period of releasing the shoe was too much. I think a couple of months would have been fine from first release to main release, but it has clearly done wonders because this shoe is highly sought after. I'm glad it's out there readily available for a lot of people on the market, and I think a lot of people are going to be stocking up on this shoe. So what's your thoughts on it? Are you enjoying them, and how many pairs have you purchased of these so far? Are you on your first pair? Are you on your second pair? Or have you had more than two? It'd be great to hear from you down in the comments below on what your thoughts are for the future on other brands. Do you think we're going to have an answer to this shoe from some of the others yet? Or do you think Adidas have won the race? And if you want to know a little bit more about the durability of this shoe, I'll leave a link up here for you guys to go and check out a 300-mile update on the EVO SL. And if you're curious to know about my top 5 running shoes of this year so far, go and check out this one down here, and I'll see you guys over on one of those.